Tank troops know many heroes, but the name of Dmitry Danilovich Lelyushenko stands apart in their glorious history. Twice hero of the Soviet Union, Army General, commander of the legendary 4th Tank Army, he traversed the fiery roads of war from Moscow to Prague. He was nicknamed General Tank for the incredible energy and swiftness with which he led his steel columns into battle. In critical moments of engagements, Lelyushenko made decisions instantaneously, sometimes determining the outcome of multi-day operations in a matter of minutes. This gift of a military leader was combined with an iron will and fearlessness. He could appear in the most dangerous sectors of the front, personally coordinating the actions of crews. Lelyushenko's unique tactical thinking allowed him to see the battlefield as a chessboard, where tanks became not just combat vehicles, but instruments of a complex military symphony. His operations were distinguished by the depth of their design, the unexpectedness of their maneuver, and the crushing force of their strike. The Don Steppe, with its endless expanses and harsh character, became the cradle for the future tank army commander. Dmitry Lelyushenko was born in 1801 in a small Cossack village of Novokuznetskaya into a simple peasant family. From an early age, the boy learned the hard peasant labor. Working in the field from dawn till dusk hardened his character and taught him patience. But the most important thing that young Dmitry absorbed from his ancestors was determination and the ability to make quick decisions, qualities that were vital in the difficult conditions of the Cossack region. From childhood, Lelyushenko was distinguished by a lively mind and restless energy. Villagers noted that the boy was always a ringleader in games, knew how to organize his peers, and find a way out of any situation. Natural quick wit and leadership qualities manifested themselves in everything, whether it was work in the field or children's games. It was these character traits that would later make him an outstanding military leader. The revolutionary events of 1917 radically changed the life of 16-year-old Dmitry. The Civil War divided the Cossack region into two irreconcilable camps. Lelyushenko unhesitatingly made his choice. In 1919, he voluntarily joined the Red Army and was enrolled in Budyonny's 1st Cavalry Army. It was in the crucible of the Civil War that Lelyushenko's military talent began to form. The young fighter quickly stood out among his comrades. His courage in battle was combined with astonishing composure and the ability to instantly assess the situation. These qualities did not go unnoticed by the command. Soon Dmitry received his first appointment to a command position. Service in the legendary 1st Cavalry became a real school of military art for Lelyushenko. He eagerly absorbed the experience of his older comrades, learned the tactics of maneuver warfare, and mastered the basics of command science. Particularly valuable were the lessons of swift cavalry raids and sudden flanking attacks, tactics that he would later brilliantly transfer to tank operations. Already in those years, Lelyushenko's characteristic trait as a commander became apparent: the ability to make unconventional decisions in critical situations. Once, his unit found itself surrounded by superior enemy forces. Instead of the expected retreat, the young commander organized a daring counterattack, which so stunned the enemy that it allowed them not only to break out of the encirclement, but also to capture an important strategic point. The 1930s became a turning point in Dmitry Lelyushenko's military career. The era of rapid changes in the army coincided with his personal professional quest. After successfully graduating from the Frunze Military Academy in 1933, various paths opened up for the talented commander. But fate decided otherwise. The cavalryman Lelyushenko encountered technology that would soon change the face of war forever. He first saw tanks at exercises near Moscow. The steel machines, overcoming ravines and forest thickets, made an indelible impression on him. Lelyushenko told his comrade then. His intuition did not fail the commander. He submitted a report requesting a transfer to the tank forces. His first appointment was as commander of a tank battalion. For the former cavalryman, mastering the new technology was a serious challenge. But Lelyushenko, with his characteristic energy, immersed himself in studying the material part, tactics, and strategy of armored vehicle application. He spent hours in tank parks, thoroughly studying every component of the combat vehicles. Driver mechanics were surprised at how quickly the new commander mastered the intricacies of tank control. Soon, Lelyushenko commanded a tank regiment, and then a brigade. During this period, his special trait emerged: the ability to approach military affairs creatively. In exercises, he constantly experimented with tactical maneuvers, seeking new ways to use tanks in conjunction with infantry, artillery, and aviation, he told his subordinates. Lelyushenko implemented these principles in the training of the first mechanized units of the Red Army. He paid special attention to practicing rapid breakthroughs, flanking maneuvers, and operations behind enemy lines. Many of his ideas were ahead of their time and met with misunderstanding from the conservative part of the command. But Lelyushenko stubbornly defended his position. Dmitry Danilovich received his baptism of fire as a tankman in the battles on the Khalkhin Gol River in 1939. Here, in the Mongolian steppes, Soviet troops under the command of Zhukov confronted the Japanese Kwantung Army. Lelyushenko's tank brigade participated in the decisive offensive, which ended with the encirclement and defeat of the Japanese group. It was in these battles that Lelyushenko's signature style, speed and decisiveness, manifested itself. His tankmen struck where they were least expected, acting preemptively and depriving the enemy of the opportunity to organize effective defense. For his skillful command of the brigade in these battles, Lelyushenko was awarded the Order of the Red Banner. Another challenge was the Soviet-Finnish War of 1939 to 1940. Here, tank units had to operate in completely different conditions. Deep snow, dense forests, narrow roads, and well-prepared enemy defensive lines created serious difficulties. Lelyushenko personally went to the front line to find solutions in difficult situations. In Finland, we gained bitter but necessary experience, Lelyushenko later recalled. We realized that tanks are vulnerable without well-organized interaction with infantry and artillery, especially in difficult terrain. On June 22, 1941, the peaceful lives of Soviet people were shattered by the explosions of German bombs. For Dmitry Lelyushenko, as for millions of his compatriots, the most difficult ordeal of his life began. In the first days of the war, he was urgently summoned to Moscow, where he received an appointment that determined his future fate. Commander of the 21st Tank Division. The enemy was opposed by undermanned units, experiencing an acute shortage of ammunition and fuel. German tank wedges cut through the Soviet defenses, creating cauldrons of encirclement. In these conditions, Lelyushenko proved himself a true master of improvisation and tactical maneuver. "We had no time to get up to speed," Dmitry Danilovich recalled later. "We had to learn to fight in battle, paying for each lesson with blood." Upon receiving the division, Lelyushenko immediately went to the front line. His appearance at the unit's locations always boosted morale. The commander personally checked the readiness of the tanks, talked with the crews, and delved into the smallest details of upcoming operations. Unlike many other commanders, he did not sit in the headquarters, preferring to direct the battle from advanced positions. The first serious test awaited Lelyushenko's division in the Battle of Smolensk. The Germans threw elite tank formations into battle, striving to break through to Moscow. The 21st Tank Division found itself at the spearhead of the attack. The situation was complicated by the fact that Soviet T-26 and BT tanks were significantly inferior to German vehicles in armor protection and armament. Lelyushenko made an unconventional decision. Instead of frontal attacks, he used tactics of ambushes and sudden flank strikes. Tanks took hidden positions in forests and ravines, let enemy advance units pass, and struck at supply columns and headquarters. This disorganized the German offensive and gained precious time. In one of the battles near Smolensk, Lelyushenko was severely wounded. A shell fragment hit his spine, and doctors insisted on long-term treatment in a rear hospital. However, just 2 weeks later, barely on his feet, Dmitry Danilovich arbitrarily left the hospital and returned to his division. "This is no time to lie around when the fate of the country is being decided," he told the astonished medics. In the autumn of '41, the situation at the front became critical. The Germans were pressing towards Moscow, and each day brought them closer to the capital. In this situation, the Stavka of the Supreme High Command decided to create shock operational groups to cover the most important directions. Command of one such group in the Mozhaisk direction was entrusted to Lelyushenko. Here, his organizational skills and ability to act in extreme conditions were fully manifested. In a matter of days, he managed to gather disparate units, organize defenses, and even conduct several successful counterattacks. Lelyushenko's tankmen especially distinguished themselves in the battles near Volokholamsk, where they managed to hold back the advance of German tank columns for several days. In these battles, Lelyushenko's command style was finely formed: swiftness, surprise, and concentration of forces in the decisive direction. Even in defense, he sought opportunities for active actions, giving the enemy no respite. These qualities were noticed by the High Command, and soon Dmitry Danilovich received a new appointment, which became a turning point in his military career. October of 1941 became the decisive month in the Battle of Moscow. The enemy, having concentrated enormous forces, was pushing towards the capital. It was at this critical moment that Dmitry Lelyushenko's military talent manifested itself. After successful actions on the Mozhaisk direction, he received a new appointment: commander of the 1st Guards Rifle Corps, which was tasked with holding back the onslaught of German troops on the Volokholamsk direction. Lelyushenko arrived at his post in the midst of fierce battles. The situation was critical. The enemy had a multiple superiority in tanks, artillery, and manpower. Many units had suffered heavy losses and were demoralized. It was necessary to immediately restore the defense and raise the morale of the troops. Dmitry Danilovich repeated these words as he toured the positions. He personally inspected every strong point, spoke with soldiers, and delved into the needs of the units. Commanders were surprised by his energy and calm confidence in the most difficult situations. Lelyushenko paid special attention to anti-tank defense. Having experience as a tankman, he accurately knew the vulnerable spots of German vehicles and skillfully used this knowledge. By his order, anti-tank areas with an echeloned fire system were created. Artillery was placed in hidden positions to fire at the sides and rear parts of enemy tanks. Quote, he instructed the artillerymen. This tactic soon proved its effectiveness. On October 23rd, the Germans launched a powerful offensive on Volokholamsk. Hundreds of tanks, supported by aviation and infantry, crashed into Lelyushenko's core positions. It seemed that nothing could hold back this steel wave. But the corps commander maintained his composure. He skillfully maneuvered reserves, directing them to the most dangerous sectors. When German tanks broke through the first line of defense, they were met by fire from camouflaged anti-tank guns. Lieutenant Lavrenenko's artillerymen distinguished themselves particularly, knocking out 16 enemy vehicles in one day. Despite the heroic resistance, the forces were unequal. Volokholamsk had to be abandoned. However, Lelyushenko managed to organize an orderly withdrawal of troops to new lines, preserving the combat readiness of the corps. This was critically important for subsequent events. In early November, when the German offensive began to falter, Lelyushenko decided on a bold move: a counterattack near Volokholamsk. This was a risky decision, considering the exhaustion of the troops and the enemy's superiority. But the corps commander correctly assessed the situation. The Germans were no less exhausted than our soldiers and did not expect active actions. The counterattack began early in the morning, when dense fog concealed the movement of Soviet troops. Lelyushenko personally directed the operation from a forward observation post. The surprise of the attack brought success. Parts of the corps deeply penetrated German positions by up to 5 kilometers, captured important strongholds, and inflicted significant losses on the enemy. We not only stopped the enemy, but also showed him that we can attack, Lelyushenko told his officers then. This counterattack was of enormous significance. It not only improved the tactical position of Soviet troops, but also had a powerful psychological impact on the enemy. The German command was forced to transfer additional reserves to this direction, weakening other sectors of the front. In December 1941, when the general counteroffensive near Moscow began, Lelyushenko's corps acted particularly successfully. His units broke through the German defenses and rapidly advanced, liberating one settlement after another. For his skillful leadership of troops in the Battle of Moscow, Dmitry Danilovich was awarded the Order of Lenin. Thus, the character of the future commander of tank armies was forged. The Battle of Moscow became for Lelyushenko a school of managing large formations in the most difficult conditions. Here, his command style, decisiveness, swiftness, and the ability to find unconventional solutions in critical situations was finally formed. 1942 became a turning point in the Great Patriotic War. The Red Army, having accumulated strength and experience, gradually shifted from defense to offense. It was during this period that Dmitry Lelyushenko's unique command style fully formed. Swiftness, surprise, and deep maneuver became his calling card. After successful actions near Moscow, Dmitry Danilovich was appointed commander of the 5th Tank Army on the Bryansk front. Here, he was to apply his accumulated experience in new conditions. A tank army is a complex mechanism requiring special management. Lelyushenko understood. The main advantage of tank formations was not the force of impact, but the speed of maneuver. A tank army is not a battering ram, but a whip, he told his officers. We must not break through a wall, but bypass it, penetrating the enemy's rear and disrupting their communications. This philosophy defined the tactics of his formations. Lelyushenko taught commanders to avoid frontal clashes with enemy anti-tank defenses. Instead, he demanded they seek out weak spots, gaps in the defense, through which they could infiltrate the enemy's rear. The first serious test awaited Lelyushenko in the summer of '42 near Voronezh. German troops launched an offensive, aiming to break through to Stalingrad and the Caucasus. The tank army under his command was tasked with stopping the enemy's advance and delivering a counterattack. Despite the difficult situation, Lelyushenko acted decisively. He did not disperse his forces along the entire front, but assembled a powerful tank fist for a flank attack on the advancing group. This maneuver caught the Germans off guard and forced them to go on the defensive in that sector. The main thing is not to let the enemy recover, Lelyushenko instructed his subordinates. A tank is strong in movement. A stop is its death. In the autumn of '42, when the Battle of Stalingrad unfolded, Lelyushenko received a new appointment, commander of the 3rd Guards Tank Army. This formation would become his main instrument in future battles. Upon taking command of the army, Dmitry Danilovich immediately set about reorganizing it. He personally inspected every brigade, spoke with crews, and delved into all the details of preparation. Special attention was paid to the interaction of tanks with infantry, artillery, and aviation. A tank cannot operate alone in modern warfare, he said. Only in close interaction with other branches of service can it fully realize its potential. The first major operation in which the 3rd Guards Tank Army under Lelyushenko participated was the counteroffensive near Stalingrad. His tank crews operated on the outer front of the encirclement, repelling German attempts to relieve Paulus's encircled group. It was here that Lelyushenko's signature style fully manifested itself. Swift raids into the enemy's rear, sudden strikes from unexpected directions, and maneuvering large tank formations. His tanks appeared where they were not expected, disrupting communications and sowing panic in the enemy's ranks. The summer of '43, the Kursk Bulge. Here, on a small section of the front, thousands of tanks clashed in a deadly battle, transforming peaceful black earth fields into a fiery hell. It was here that Dmitry Lelyushenko distinguished himself as one of the outstanding tank commanders of World War II. Already in spring, Soviet command received intelligence data about the Germans' preparation for a large-scale offensive on the Kursk salient. The headquarters of the Supreme High Command decided not to preempt the enemy, but to wear him down in defensive battles, and then launch a counteroffensive. Lelyushenko's tank army became one of the main instruments of this plan. The enemy will throw all his best tank formations into battle, Lelyushenko said at a commander's meeting. Preparations for the battle were in full swing. Lelyushenko personally inspected each tank brigade, delving into the smallest details. He paid special attention to the organization of anti-tank defense. By his order, multi-layered fire systems were created, where artillery, tanks, and anti-tank rifles complemented each other. He instructed the artillerymen. On July 5th, the Germans launched Operation Citadel. Hundreds of tanks, supported by aircraft, moved towards Soviet positions. The earth trembled from explosions and the clang of tracks. The sky blackened from the smoke of burning vehicles. The largest tank battle in history began. Lelyushenko was at the forward command post, from where he personally directed the actions of his units. When German tanks broke through the first line of defense, he did not panic, but calmly regrouped his forces and organized a counterattack on the flank of the advancing group. Quote, he ordered the brigade commanders. Quote, this tactic brought success. The German offensive slowed down and then stopped. Particularly fierce battles unfolded in the Prokhorovka area, where on July 12th, the largest meeting tank battle took place. Here, Lelyushenko proved himself a master of tank warfare. Understanding that Soviet T-34s were inferior to, quote, in gunpowder and armor thickness, he bet on maneuver and the massiveness of the strike. By his order, tanks attacked in groups of 5 to 7 vehicles, concentrating fire on a single target. In addition, Lelyushenko skillfully used the terrain, directing his vehicles through ravines and hollows to come out on the flanks and rear of German tank wedges. Quote, he repeated to his officers. Quote, Lelyushenko's ability to quickly react to changes in the situation was particularly evident. When intelligence reported the concentration of a large group of German tanks for a breakthrough in one sector, he immediately transferred reserves there and organized an ambush. 30 German tanks, including several Tigers, were knocked out in this battle. By July 15th, the offensive potential of the German troops was exhausted. The Soviet counteroffensive began. Lelyushenko's tank army switched from defense to decisive offensive operations. Now he could fully implement his tactics of deep breakthroughs and flanking maneuvers. Lelyushenko ordered. Lelyushenko's tankers acted swiftly. They breached the German defenses and advanced several tens of kilometers, liberating one settlement after another. The 4th Tank Brigade was particularly successful, advancing 50 kilometers in 2 days and liberating an important transport hub. For his skillful leadership of troops in the Battle of Kursk, Dmitry Lelyushenko was awarded the Order of Suvorov First Class. His tank army received the honorary title of Guards. The Battle of Kursk became a turning point, not only in the course of the Great Patriotic War, but also in the development of tank warfare. Here, the principles of using large tank formations, which Lelyushenko would use in subsequent operations, were finally formed. The main ones were concentration of forces in decisive directions, deep flanking maneuvers, close interaction with other branches of troops, and determination in achieving set goals. Autumn of 43rd, after the defeat of German troops at the Battle of Kursk, the Red Army launched a strategic offensive along the entire front. One of the key tasks was to force the Dnieper, a water barrier that the Nazis had turned into a powerful defensive line, calling it the Eastern Wall. It was here that Dmitry Lelyushenko proved himself a master of swift breakthrough and deep maneuver. The German command believed that the Dnieper would be an insurmountable obstacle for Soviet troops. The western bank, dominating the terrain, had been turned into a continuous line of fortifications. High, steep banks, the wide riverbed, and the autumn flood created additional difficulties. "The enemy relies on the natural barrier," Lelyushenko told his officers. "But water only stops those who are afraid to get their feet wet. We must cross the Dnieper on the move, without giving the Germans a chance to recover." Preparation for the operation proceeded under strict secrecy. Lelyushenko personally directed reconnaissance, identifying weak points in the enemy's defense. He understood that a classic river crossing with prolonged artillery preparation and a massive troop transfer would inevitably meet organized resistance. Instead, Lelyushenko developed a plan for swift actions by small groups across a wide front. His tank crews were to reach the river simultaneously at several points and immediately begin crossing using makeshift means. This scattered the defending forces and created panic in their ranks. Lelyushenko instructed his commanders. In late September, Lelyushenko's army's advanced detachments reached the Dnieper. Without losing a minute, scouts and assault groups began crossing. They used fishing boats, rafts made of barrels and logs, even empty shell boxes. The Germans, not expecting such swift actions, did not have time to organize an effective defense along the entire length of the river. By dawn of the next day, several Soviet bridgeheads were already operating on the western bank. Lelyushenko immediately moved reinforcements and light artillery there. He understood that holding and expanding the bridgeheads was a matter of life and death for the entire operation. Quote, he said, quote, "The German command, realizing the danger, threw tanks and infantry into counterattacks. Fierce battles ensued. The situation was complicated by the inability to quickly move heavy equipment and artillery across the Dnieper. But Lelyushenko found a way out. He ordered the concentration of the maximum amount of artillery on the eastern bank, which fired across the river, supporting the actions of the assault groups. Particularly heavy fighting unfolded at the central bridgehead. The Germans, having brought up reserves, tried to throw the Soviet soldiers into the river. At a critical moment, Lelyushenko made a bold decision. He personally crossed to the western bank to direct the defense. The appearance of the army commander at the front line caused a powerful surge in morale. Lelyushenko quickly assessed the situation and regrouped forces, creating an effective defense system. He skillfully used the terrain, positioning firing points on dominant heights and organizing a system of crossfire, he told the soldiers. This tactic brought success. Despite numerical superiority, the Germans could not eliminate the bridgeheads. Moreover, by the end of the first week of October, Soviet troops had significantly expanded the occupied territory, creating conditions for the crossing of the main forces. A new stage of the operation began, an offensive from the bridgeheads deep into the enemy's defense. Here, Lelyushenko's talent as a master of mobile warfare fully manifested itself. Having received tank reinforcements, he did not attack fortified strongholds head-on, but struck at the junctions between German units. "Do not waste strength on frontal attacks," he ordered the brigade commanders. "Look for weak spots, infiltrate deep into the defense, create panic in the enemy's rear." In March 1944, a significant turning point occurred in the life of Dmitry Lelyushenko. He was appointed commander of the 4th Tank Army. This formation had a glorious history, but required serious reorganization after heavy fighting. Lelyushenko took command of the army during preparations for major offensive operations that were intended to lead to the liberation of the western regions of the Soviet Union and the countries of Eastern Europe. The first thing the new army commander did was personally visit all units and subdivisions to form his own understanding of the army's condition. He spoke with officers and soldiers, checked the technical state of the tanks, and studied the level of combat training of the crews. Quote, Lelyushenko told his subordinates, he paid special attention to forming a team of like-minded individuals within the army staff. Dmitry Danilovich understood that without the coordinated work of the staff, effective management of such a complex structure as a tank army would be impossible. He gathered around him experienced officers who had passed through the crucible of previous battles and shared his views on conducting tank operations. Colonel Mikhail Zaretsky, a talented staff officer with an analytical mind, was appointed Chief of Staff. Lieutenant Colonel Viktor Karpov, known for his ability to quickly assess situations and make unconventional decisions, became head of the operational department. These and other staff officers formed the core of the team that subsequently ensured the success of the 4th Tank Army's operations. The staff is the brain of the army, Lelyushenko loved to repeat. Its work determines whether our strength turns into chaotic blows or a precisely calculated, devastating fist. Concurrently with forming the staff, Lelyushenko undertook a reorganization of the army's structure. He regrouped tank brigades, reinforced them with artillery and motorized infantry, and created powerful forward detachments for rapid breakthroughs. Special attention was paid to repair and recovery units, which were to ensure the quick repair of damaged equipment directly on the battlefield. The new army commander's management style immediately made itself felt. Lelyushenko was extremely demanding of his subordinates. He did not tolerate sloppiness, carelessness, or failure to execute orders. He strictly questioned mistakes, regardless of rank or past merits. In battle, the price of a mistake is human lives, he told officers. We have no right to negligence. However, Lelyushenko's demanding nature was always combined with fairness and care for people. He never humiliated subordinates, nor did he yell at them. His remarks were precise and specific, and his criticism was constructive. At the same time, the army commander always noted successes and encouraged initiative. An important feature of Lelyushenko's management style was personal example. He never demanded from subordinates what he could not do himself. The army commander often appeared at the front line, personally checked the execution of orders, and participated in reconnaissances. During exercises, he might get behind the controls of a tank to demonstrate correct driving techniques or tactical maneuvers. A commander must be ahead, not only by position but also by deeds. These words became the unspoken motto of the officers of the 4th Tank Army. Lelyushenko paid particular attention to combat training. He organized a system of tactical exercises as close as possible to real combat conditions. Tankers practiced breaking through enemy defenses, forcing water barriers, operating in urban environments, and night operations. Commanders of all levels learned to make independent decisions in complex, rapidly changing situations. One of Lelyushenko's innovations was integrated exercises involving all branches of service within the army. Tankers learned to interact with motorized infantry, artillery, sappers, and signalmen. This allowed them to practice coordinated actions and mutual understanding between different units. The summer of 1944, the Red Army, strengthened and experienced, was preparing for decisive battles in the western direction. The 4th Tank Army, under the command of Dmitry Lelyushenko, was to play a key role in the Lvov-Sandomierz operation, one of the largest offensive operations of Soviet troops in the final stage of the war. The German command had established a powerful defense system in the Lvov direction. 7 lines of trenches, hundreds of pillboxes and bunkers, minefields and anti-tank ditches. All this Lelyushenko's tankmen had to overcome. The enemy was confident that such fortifications would prevent Soviet troops from developing a swift offensive. But Dmitry Danilovich held a different opinion. At a meeting of commanders, he unfolded a map and pointed to a narrow section of the front. The officers exchanged glances. The idea was bold but risky. Concentrating such a large number of vehicles on a narrow section made it vulnerable to enemy aviation and artillery. However, Lelyushenko was unyielding, he said. To ensure surprise, Lelyushenko employed a military ruse. The main forces of the tank army were concentrated in the forests, away from the direction of the main attack. They advanced to the breakthrough point only at night, observing the strictest camouflage measures, moving with headlights off, talking and smoking prohibited. During the day, demonstrative activity was created in other sectors of the front, diverting the enemy's attention. The offensive began on July 13, 1944, with a powerful artillery barrage. 2,500 guns unleashed a storm of fire on enemy positions. Following the rolling barrage, the infantry went on the attack, and behind them, Lelyushenko's tanks. The Germans offered fierce resistance, but the concentration of forces on a narrow sector bore fruit. By the end of the first day, the enemy's defense was breached to a depth of up to 10 kilometers. Now came the finest hour for Lelyushenko's tankmen. Quote 3, ordered the army commander. Quote 4, the tank columns surged forward, developing the breakthrough. Lelyushenko was in the vanguard, personally directing the actions of the troops. When the western Bug River appeared in the path of the tankmen, the army commander made a bold decision: to force it on the move without waiting for the arrival of engineering units. Quote 5, he ordered. Quote 6, this swiftness caught the Germans by surprise. They did not have time to organize a defense on the opposite bank, and Soviet troops continued the offensive without pause. Lelyushenko's talent was particularly evident in the battle for Lvov. The city had been turned into a powerful defensive stronghold by the Germans. A frontal assault threatened heavy losses. Assessing the situation, Dmitry Danilovich made an unconventional decision: not to storm the city head-on, but to bypass it from the north and south, closing the encirclement. Lvov is not a goal, but an obstacle in our path, he explained to the commanders. By bypassing it, we will deprive the garrison of supplies and support, and it will fall on its own. The maneuver was brilliantly successful. Lelyushenko's tank wedges bypassed Lvov from the flanks and linked up west of the city. Trapped in the cauldron, the German garrison began a hasty retreat, but it was too late. The escape routes had been cut. On July 27th, Lvov was completely liberated. Without resting on their laurels, Lelyushenko's tank army continued its rapid offensive to the west. In 2 weeks, the tankmen advanced more than 200 kilometers, reached the Vistula River, and forced it on the move in the area of Sandomierz. The capture of the bridgehead on the western bank of the Vistula was of strategic importance. It opened the way to the southern regions of Poland and further into Germany. Understanding this, the German command launched large tank formations, including units of the SS Viking Division, into a counteroffensive. Here, Lelyushenko proved himself not only a master of offense, but also a skilled organizer of defense. He skillfully positioned anti-tank artillery on dominant heights, created a system of tank ambushes, and organized mobile groups for counterattacks. We must not only hold the bridgehead, but also expand it, Lelyushenko told the officers. Every meter of land beyond the Vistula is our bridgehead for the future offensive on Berlin. German attacks followed one after another, but Lelyushenko's tankmen fought to the death. When the situation became critical, the army commander personally went to threatened sectors and organized counterattacks. His presence at the front inspired the soldiers and gave them strength. January 1945. The Red Army was preparing for the decisive push to Berlin. But before storming the lair of the fascist beast, it was necessary to overcome the enemy's powerful defensive lines between the Vistula and the Oder. The 4th Tank Army, under the command of Dmitry Lelyushenko, was to play a key role in this grandiose operation. The Vistula-Oder operation was conceived as a swift dash from one major river to another. A distance of 500 kilometers had to be covered in the shortest possible time, without giving the enemy a chance to organize defenses on intermediate lines. Quote, Lelyushenko said at a meeting of commanders, Quote, "Preparations for the operation were carried out in strict secrecy. Lelyushenko personally checked the readiness of each tank brigade. Special attention was paid to the technical condition of the vehicles, the stock of fuel, and ammunition. The army commander understood that in a swift dash, one could not count on regular supplies. The tanks had to carry the maximum stock of everything necessary. On January 12, 1945, after a powerful artillery barrage, the troops of the 1st Ukrainian Front launched an offensive from the Sandomierets bridgehead. Lelyushenko's 4th Tank Army was introduced into the breakthrough the next day, when the infantry had broken through the enemy's first line of defense. Quote, the army commander ordered, quote, "Tank columns rushed forward. Lelyushenko was in the lead brigade, personally directing the actions of the troops. When reconnaissance reported a strong enemy defense node in the direction of movement, the army commander decided not to attack it head-on, but to bypass it from the flanks. Quote, he repeated, quote, this tactic brought success. Lelyushenko's tankers advanced at an unprecedented speed, up to 50 kilometers a day. The German command was in a panic. Soviet tanks appeared where no one expected them, cutting off communications and encircling entire divisions. Lelyushenko's talent was particularly evident in forcing the numerous rivers encountered during the offensive. Traditionally, such operations required lengthy preparation, the pulling up of pontoon units, and engineering support. But the army commander could not afford such a luxury. Any pause gave the enemy time to organize defenses. Quote, was his invariable order. The tankers showed miracles of inventiveness. Light tanks crossed shallow rivers along the bottom. For heavier vehicles, improvised bridges were built from logs and improvised materials. The infantry crossed on rafts, boats, and even on doors removed from houses. On January 18th, Lelyushenko's tank units liberated the important industrial center, the city of Krakow. The Germans planned to turn the ancient Polish capital into ruins, having mined historical buildings and bridges. But the rapid advance of Soviet tanks thwarted these plans. Sabotage groups were captured before they could detonate the mines. We saved not just a city, Lelyushenko said then. We preserved the history and culture of the Polish people. Not stopping there, the 4th Tank Army continued its offensive to the west. On January 24th, Lelyushenko's tankers reached the German border. Ahead lay enemy territory, Silesia with its powerful defensive line. The German command expected that Soviet troops would stop to regroup and pull up their rear. But Lelyushenko thought differently. He understood that delay would give the enemy an opportunity to organize defenses, and ordered to continue the offensive without an operational pause. Don't give the Germans a moment's respite, the army commander demanded. Only forward, only to the west. By the end of January, the advanced units of the 4th Tank Army reached the Oder, the last major water barrier on the way to Berlin. Behind them lay 500 kilometers of liberated land. The Vistula-Oder operation, planned for 45 days, was completed in 23 days, an unprecedented case in the history of tank troops. But Lelyushenko was not going to stop. He understood the strategic importance of the bridgeheads on the western bank of the Oder for the future offensive on Berlin. Despite the fatigue of the troops and stretched communications, the army commander ordered an immediate start to the river crossing. April 1945. The war was nearing its logical conclusion. Ahead lay Berlin, the citadel of fascism, the last stronghold of Hitler's Germany. The 4th Tank Army, under the command of Dmitry Lelyushenko, was preparing for a decisive thrust towards the German capital. An operation loomed that was to put an end to the bloody war. Quote, Lelyushenko told his officers at a meeting before the offensive. Quote, preparations for the assault were in full swing. Lelyushenko personally inspected each tank brigade, spoke with crews, and studied city maps. The army commander paid particular attention to studying Berlin's fortifications. The Germans had turned the city into a true fortress. Numerous barricades, anti-tank ditches, minefields, pillboxes, and bunkers encircled Berlin with several rings of defense. A city is a special environment for tanks, Lelyushenko explained to his commanders. Here you can't maneuver, you can't outflank. Here every house is a fortress, every intersection a battlefield. Lelyushenko's experience in urban combat was invaluable. As early as 43, his tankmen liberated Kiev. Then came Lviv, Krakow, and dozens of other cities. But Berlin presented a particular challenge. A huge metropolis with multi-story buildings, wide avenues and narrow streets, underground communications, and canals. On April 16th, the Berlin offensive began. After powerful artillery preparation and airstrikes, Soviet troops went on the offensive. Lelyushenko's 4th Tank Army operated on the southern flank, advancing as part of the 1st Ukrainian Front. The first days of the offensive were difficult. The Germans resisted desperately, understanding that this was their last line of defense. Particularly fierce battles unfolded on the Zilo Heights, a natural fortified line on the approaches to Berlin. Lelyushenko made a bold decision, not to storm the heights head-on, but to bypass them from the south, using the wooded terrain for a stealthy maneuver. This move caught the Germans by surprise. They expected a frontal attack and concentrated their main forces there, quote, the army commander reminded them, quote. On April 20, Lelyushenko's tank columns reached the immediate approaches to Berlin. Ahead lay the city, a vast labyrinth of streets turned into defensive lines. Here, the army commander had to completely revise the tactics of tank formations. Instead of large tank groups, Lelyushenko created assault detachments, which included 2 or 3 tanks, a squad of submachine gunners, sappers, and flamethrower operators. Such compact groups could operate effectively in urban conditions, infiltrating between enemy strongholds. Don't get carried away with frontal attacks, Lelyushenko instructed his commanders. Use courtyards, parks, industrial zones for outflanking. Block resistance nodes and move on, not allowing the enemy to organize a continuous line of defense. Special attention was paid to interaction with infantry. Tanks without cover became easy prey for Faustpatron operators who could suddenly appear from basements or attics. Lelyushenko ordered 5 or 6 submachine gunners to be placed on the armor of each tank to protect the machine from grenadiers. The tank and the infantryman in the city are brothers, the army commander said. One without the other is helpless. On April 25, Lelyushenko's tankmen linked up with units of the 1st Belarusian Front, closing the encirclement around Berlin. Now, it was necessary to cut the enemy's grouping into parts and destroy it piecemeal. The army commander was in the vanguard, personally directing the actions of the assault groups. When one of the tank battalions got stuck under heavy fire near a barricade on Potsdamer Strasse, Lelyushenko arrived at the scene and organized an outflanking maneuver through ruined buildings, which allowed them to get to the enemy's flank. He said then, by the end of April, Soviet troops reached the central districts of Berlin. Ahead was the Reichstag, the main symbol of Nazi Germany. Lelyushenko's tanks paved the way for the assault groups moving towards this building. On April 29, the 4th Tank Army reached Tiergarten, Berlin's Central Park, from which a direct path to the government quarter opened. Here, the Germans offered particularly fierce resistance. Every building had to be taken by storm. In these most challenging conditions, Lelyushenko's best qualities as a commander, coolness, decisiveness, and the ability to find unconventional solutions, manifested themselves. When it was discovered that the Germans had flooded the underground subway tunnels, creating additional obstacles for the advancing troops, he quickly regrouped forces and directed the tanks through dry sections, using breaches in building walls. May 5, 1945. Berlin had fallen. The red banner waved over the Reichstag. It seemed the war was over. But while Moscow saluted the victors, an uprising flared up in Prague. The Czech capital cried for help. And Lelyushenko's 4th Tank Army received its last combat order to make a lightning-fast dash to insurgent Prague. The German Army Group Center, under the command of Field Marshal Schörner, refused to capitulate and was preparing to turn Prague into the last stronghold of the Third Reich. Over 800,000 Wehrmacht soldiers and officers, hundreds of tanks and self-propelled guns posed a serious threat to the insurgent Czechs. Quote, Lelyushenko said at an emergency meeting of commanders, quote, the tank crews faced an almost impossible task: to cover over 300 kilometers over mountainous terrain in 2 days. The equipment was worn out from the Berlin battles, the men were exhausted, and the rear lines were stretched. But Lelyushenko did not recognize the word quote. The army commander ordered, quote, on May 6th at 4 in the morning, the tank columns set off. Lelyushenko rode in the lead vehicle, personally controlling the pace of movement. When one of the tanks broke down, he ordered the entire column not to stop, but to detach a repair crew and continue moving. Quote, the army commander repeated, quote, the route led through the Ore Mountains, a most difficult section with steep ascents, serpentines, and narrow gorges. The tanks climbed the mountain roads, consuming the last drops of fuel. Driver mechanics did not close their eyes for 20 hours, but continued to drive the vehicles. At the passes, the column was met by German roadblocks. Field Marshal Schörner, understanding the strategic importance of the mountain passes, sent elite SS units there. But Lelyushenko did not get involved in protracted battles. Quote, he ordered, quote, the tank crews found bypass trails that even the locals did not know about. Heavy vehicles made their way where it seemed only mountain goats could pass. It was a true feat of skill and bravery. On May 8th, reconnaissance reported, a large SS group was moving towards Prague from the northwest. If it entered the city before the Soviet troops, the insurgents would face a bloody massacre. Lelyushenko decided to send a forward detachment of the fastest tanks to break through. Quote, he told the detachment commander. The forward detachment rushed towards Prague, ignoring small enemy groups. When fuel ran out, the tank crews refueled from abandoned German equipment. When vehicles broke down, they transferred to captured ones. On May 9th, at 4 in the morning, the first Soviet tanks burst into the suburbs of Prague. They were met by jubilant crowds of Czechs with flowers and national flags. People cried with happiness, hugged the tank crews, and helped them navigate the unfamiliar city. But the fighting was not yet over. SS men entrenched in the central districts offered fierce resistance. They understood that they had nothing to lose. The war was lost, and they faced judgment for war crimes. Lelyushenko arrived in Prague with the main forces by noon. Assessing the situation, he divided the city into sectors, assigning responsibility for each. The tank crews operated in small assault groups, working closely with Czech rebels. Quote, the army commander ordered. By the evening of May 9th, the last pockets of resistance were suppressed. Prague was completely liberated. A spontaneous parade took place in the city streets. Lelyushenko's tanks moved surrounded by thousands of Czechs, showering them with flowers. This operation became the final chord in the combat path of the legendary tank army commander. From Moscow to Prague, such was the path of Dmitry Danilovich Lelyushenko, a man whose name is forever etched in the history of the Great Patriotic War. The tactical legacy of Dmitry Lelyushenko is an invaluable treasure trove of military art, forged in the crucible of humanity's most terrible war. His methods of troop command and principles of organizing tank operations became classics of military science, studied in academies worldwide. What, then, were the secrets of this outstanding army commander's mastery? First and foremost, Lelyushenko was a master of maneuver. He rarely employed frontal assaults, preferring to strike where the enemy least expected it. A tank is not a battering ram but a whip, the army commander often repeated. This philosophy defined his tactics, seeking out weak spots in enemy defenses, infiltrating them with small groups, and then expanding the breakthrough by introducing main forces. Lelyushenko's second crucial principle was swiftness. He instructed his officers. His tank formations moved at an incredible speed for that era, sometimes covering up to 50 kilometers a day. This deprived the enemy of the ability to organize effective defense and led to the disorganization of their rear. A special place in Lelyushenko's tactical arsenal was occupied by his ability to organize the interaction of various branches of service. He understood that a tank, for all its power, was vulnerable without support. A tank army is an orchestra where every instrument is important, the army commander said. Tanks, motorized infantry, artillery, sappers, signalmen, all acted as a single mechanism. Lelyushenko developed a unique system for commanding tank formations in battle. He rejected rigid centralization, granting brigade and battalion commanders significant freedom of action. The main thing was a clear understanding of the operation's design and ultimate goal. Quote, he taught staff officers, quote, one of Lelyushenko's innovative techniques was the creation of advanced detachments, mobile tactical groups comprising tanks, motorized infantry, artillery, and sappers. These detachments were thrown far ahead of the main forces, seized key objectives, and held them until the main forces arrived. Such tactics allowed for maintaining high rates of advance and creating chaos in the enemy's rear. Lelyushenko's talent was particularly evident in forcing water obstacles. Traditionally, these operations required lengthy preparation, but the army commander developed a method for forcing rivers on the move. A river is no obstacle for one who is not afraid to get their tracks wet, he joked. His tank crews crossed the largest European rivers, the Dnieper, Vistula, Oder, practically without operational pauses, which was a revolutionary approach for that time. A crucial element of Lelyushenko's tactics was his ability to organize reconnaissance. He said, the army commander created a multi-level system for information gathering. Aerial reconnaissance, tank reconnaissance groups, foot scouts, radio interception. This allowed him to have a complete picture of the battlefield and make informed decisions. Lelyushenko paid particular attention to organizing communications. He understood that in the rapidly changing environment of tank combat, a loss of control could lead to disaster. His army operated a reliable communication system, duplicated by several methods: radio, wire communication, signal flares, motorcycle messengers. The army commander was always in contact with his subordinates, allowing him to react promptly to changes in the situation. Lelyushenko made a significant contribution to the development of the theory of deep tank breakthroughs. He refined the concept of echeloning tank formations, proposing a, quote, 7 scheme. The first echelon, fist, breached the enemy's defenses. The second, dissection, expanded the breakthrough and fragmented the defense into isolated pockets. And the third, encirclement, moved deep into the rear and surrounded the enemy's main forces. Lelyushenko's most important legacy was his system for training tank commanders. He created a true school of tank art, raising a whole galaxy of talented officers. A commander must know his business better than his subordinates, Lelyushenko demanded. He personally conducted classes with officers, reviewed past battles, analyzed mistakes, and noted successful solutions. After the war, Dmitry Danilovich continued to develop the theory of tank operations, adapting it to the conditions of nuclear confrontation. He was one of the first to realize that in the new conditions, tank formations had to be even more mobile, capable of rapid dispersion and concentration, and operating autonomously in conditions of disrupted control. Lelyushenko's tactical legacy had an enormous influence on the formation of Soviet post-war military doctrine. His ideas formed the basis of the concept of deep operations, which envisioned simultaneous strikes across the entire depth of the enemy's defenses, using tank armies as the main strike force. Many principles developed by Lelyushenko remain relevant in modern conditions. Swiftness, maneuver, interaction of branches of service, a flexible command system. These elements remain key factors for success in armored operations today. Military theorists from various countries continue to study the experience of the tank general, finding in it answers to the challenges of modern warfare. After the war, Dmitry Danilovich Lelyushenko continued to serve the motherland. His vast combat experience was invaluable to the army as it entered the Cold War era. In 1946, he headed the South Ural Military District and then commanded troops in the Carpathian region and the group of Soviet forces in Germany. Everywhere, Lelyushenko implemented advanced methods of combat training based on real war experience. The new geopolitical reality demanded a re-evaluation of the role of tank forces. The advent of nuclear weapons seemingly diminished the importance of traditional armaments. Many military theorists even predicted the end of the tank era, but Lelyushenko looked deeper. He understood that it was tank formations, with their mobility and protection, that were capable of operating in conditions of the use of weapons of mass destruction. Tank forces in a nuclear war are not an anachronism, but a necessity, Lelyushenko stated at military scientific conferences. Only armored formations are capable of quickly overcoming contaminated areas, executing swift maneuvers, and delivering decisive blows. Under Lelyushenko's leadership, a new concept for the use of tank forces in a nuclear conflict was developed. It envisioned the dispersed arrangement of units on the march, the ability to quickly concentrate for a strike, and immediate dispersion after completing a mission. Special attention was paid to protection against the damaging factors of a nuclear explosion and operations in conditions of disrupted command and control. But Lelyushenko understood that a global conflict was not the only scenario. The world had entered an era of local wars, where different approaches were required. Analyzing the experience of the Korean War and other conflicts, he developed methods for countering guerrilla formations, operating in urban environments, and in mountainous terrain. Quote, the general insisted. As time showed, many of Lelyushenko's ideas proved prophetic. His concepts were confirmed in the Arab-Israeli wars, conflicts in Southeast Asia and the Middle East. The tank not only did not leave the battlefield, but remained a key element of ground operations. Particularly relevant were the principles developed by Lelyushenko for the interaction of tanks with other branches of service. He was one of the first to realize the need for a comprehensive approach to conducting combat operations. Tanks, infantry, artillery, aviation, engineering units all had to act as a single organism. Modern combat is a symphony where every instrument is important, Lelyushenko explained figuratively. The conductor-commander must achieve the perfect sound from this orchestra. This approach formed the basis of the concept of combined arms combat, which became the cornerstone of the military doctrine of many countries. Today, no serious military operation is planned without considering the interaction of various branches of service. And Dmitry Lelyushenko deserves significant credit for this. Surprisingly, many tactical techniques developed by the tank general in the middle of the last century remain relevant today. His principles of maneuver, concentration of forces in decisive directions, and deep raids into the enemy's rear are used in modern military conflicts. Analyzing recent combat operations, military experts note that successful tank operations are built on the same principles that Lelyushenko advocated: surprise, swiftness, and massive application in narrow sections of the front. Technologies change, but the fundamental laws of war remain immutable. Of particular value is the personal aspect of Lelyushenko's legacy. His qualities as a commander, decisiveness, initiative, the ability to quickly assess the situation and make unconventional decisions, serve as a benchmark for modern military leaders. A true commander must be half a step ahead of events, Dmitry Danilovich said. He who reacts to a situation is already late. One must anticipate the development of events and act proactively. This principle of preemptive command and control, formulated by Lelyushenko, now forms the basis of officer training in many military academies around the world. Modern troop control systems, for all their technological sophistication, are based on the same fundamental ideas championed by the legendary tank army commander. Lelyushenko's ability to find unconventional solutions in critical situations is especially valuable in an era of asymmetric conflicts and hybrid wars. His approach to overcoming complex obstacles, bypassing resistance nodes, and organizing sudden strikes against the enemy's vulnerable points is relevant in modern conditions.